Decision making can be one of the hardest things that anyone does, especially when it's an important decision. And figuring out, like you're saying, how to slow your brain down, really measure out what needs to be done. Your context and clarity points in the 5 C's is, I think you even said it. Nobody's doing that in almost any decision, even the tough, complex ones, or the ones that have the biggest impacts on your life. Let's advocate for that.
I have my decision framework, and every now and again, I don't use it either, right? Because
I
it's like,
mean,
and by the way, sometimes it's fine, right? If you have wisdom, then you can intuit a decision and probably be right 80, 90% of the time. But what
yeah, you're
happens is we apply that engine to where we don't have wisdom. That's when we get in trouble.
Well, that's hubris and other versions of thinking you're bigger than you are. But
But it
intuition is
feels right. That's the problem. It feels correct. I'm just,
okay.
you know, because I intuited this and this was right, I'm now I'm intuiting A where I have wisdom, but I'm intuiting B where I don't have wisdom. It's the exact same feeling. So, but we're like, well, why didn't B work out where A did? It's because we don't realize that we didn't really know anything about how boats work or how a
Mm,
toilet works,
gotcha.
right? We think we know how a toilet works, right? This is a great example when people say, how confident are you that you know how your toilet works? And people say, oh, 70, 80% confident. Great. Could you just sketch out how that works for me? And most of them can't do it
Oh
because it's
boy, absolutely. I mean that's there was a Big Bang Theory episode where all the guys are in a car that breaks down and they say, "Does anyone know how a combustion engine works?" And everyone says yes. Does anyone know how to fix it? And they all say no. So you're right. And that's an argument for accumulation of knowledge, which is sort of my whole shtick. There's no reason not to ask questions about things you don't know the answer to. If you have enough information, you're probably never going to make a bad decision. Doesn't mean it's
yeah.
like wrong or, not the best decision or anything like that, because you can play with nuance all you want, but you're probably not going to make a bad decision that totally blows up in your face. You're going to avoid saying, well, if I had only known. The more information you have, the less likely it is for you to be missing a piece of the
So
puzzle.
maybe I gotta say,
Maybe.
well,
Okay.
here's the problem, right? Is that so the way we have the hippocampus, which is the thing that takes the information in and then decides what to do with it. And most of the time it says, get rid of it,
Okay.
right? It's like, put it somewhere. You're like, we don't need to remember this. It's not that important. But those things that are important to the hippocampus, it stores in long-term memory.
Okay.
And the reason it knows it's important is because it sees it over and over and over again.
Uh,
Bill's getting up every morning and brushing his teeth, right? And so let's store how to brush teeth in long-term memory or something like that, right? I'm using a really simple example. But when I get up and I do it once a year, it's not storing it in a place where I can easily recall it. This is why first
oh,
principles works, right? Is when you understand how things work at a first principle level, you don't have to remember all the details. You can just say, I understand how gravity works. I understand how suction works. I understand how mechanics work. So I have a general concept of how a toilet works, right? Because gravity's pulling the water down. I've got this sort of suction thing where it's moving water from one place to another where it wouldn't be, but because there's a force pulling it, and I understand mechanics. When I push this thing down, it's lifting that thing up. Right now, I don't have to remember
right.
all the details of how all of those things work. How this chain is attached to here. The force of gravity. Or whatever.
Hmm.
I don't have to remember all that stuff, but I understand the principles, and then you can then say, so if that's true, how would I do it in this case? So you don't have to remember the details, because very often you're not going to remember the details.
And that's why relying on intuition in your area of expertise tricks you into believing you can use your intuition in other areas, and
Yes.
that blows up in your okay. So you get too confident in the arena you love playing in. Okay, I get that. I mean, I'm still an advocate for accumulation of
Oh,
information
I'm not saying you
for no
shouldn't. I'm
reason,
just
but
saying, like, if you were in a
okay.
situation where, let's say, you learned how a car works, etc., and then 10 years later your car breaks down, I'm going to challenge that you don't know how to fix your car. You're just not going to remember how to do it all, right? But you may remember a little bit about how it works, and you could potentially try stuff because you know enough about the basics, right? The
Yeah.
foundation of it to say, okay, it's either an ignition problem, it's a transmission problem, or it's a gear
Yeah.
problem. Let me go
Okay.
look at those things and see if there's
Right.
something like, oh, well, that wire is not attached or whatever.
And
And then
that's
you're like, okay,
basically the first principle. The first principle
exactly.
being, how does it work? And then, you see an issue and then you have to investigate for second, third, fourth order. Okay. I got
Right.
you. I
So
got
first
you.
principles are a lot easier to remember
Got
And
you.
especially because you can apply them across lots of stuff versus having to remember individual details of every single thing.
Hmm.
Right? This is why physics is a wonderful scientific process, right? Is that because physics is first principle thinking,
Yeah.
right? And that's why I
Right.
study neuroscience because neuroscience is first principles, right? Our brain is what keeps us alive.